alt season is unlikely to arrive until this one thing happens. What is this thing, you ask? In today's video, we're going to break this down. We're going to understand this critical component, how we can measure it, and dare I say, how can we forecast it? If you're excited to become a better investor, like and subscribe down below, and let's hop into one of the most important catalysts for alt season. Now, guys, what is this all-important indicator that can give us insights into alt season? It's the business cycle. For some of you, this might be a refresher course. You've been with this channel for a while. You know this is something that I focus on a lot. But for those of you who are new or haven't heard of it before, listen up, because this is going to be an important crash course. On your screen, you can see a pretty simple overview of the business cycle. You have an expansion phase, you have a contraction, a trough, another expansion goes up to the peak, contraction trough, expansion peak. And this is the business cycle. It's very simple, actually. It represents the expansion or the contraction of the economy. As a result, risk assets tend to do better or worse while the economy is growing. Now, how we measure the business cycle is through something called the ISM. Stands for the Institute for Supply Management. Essentially, it's a survey that they give to the world's largest supply chain managers. They ask a series of questions. Based on those questions, based on their answers, they give a score somewhere between 30, 40, and about 60, 65. Above 50 means we're expanding. Below 50 means we're contracting. I'm going to be using some charts from Raoul Paul and Julian Biddle over at Real Vision. Their ISM charts are great, so why reinvent the wheel? You can see the connection here between ETH, BTC. So as the ISM goes higher, Ethereum goes higher against its Bitcoin pair. As it falls, it does worse. Now, the reason for this is because as the economy expands, people get more wealthy. They feel better about their finances. They have more hours. They have more jobs. They have more contracts. Businesses are typically doing better. People tend to get a little bit riskier with their finances. And this results in what we call a broadening out. They call it this in TradFi. The TradFi version of alt season is essentially this broadening out. You hear a lot of people talk about it. What the broadening out means is that people move away from the high cap, high value assets such as maybe Nvidia or Microsoft or Apple. In crypto's case, we're talking about things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and they go into riskier, maybe less valuable equities or crypto tokens. Maybe we start to see the Russell 2000 start to do better, which is the index for small cap equities. And so in crypto, you can see that this results to Bitcoin dominance falling because we see a broadening out. Money leaves Bitcoin, money leaves Ethereum, money leaves the top 10, and it goes into these riskier categories. And so to help put this in perspective, I've got a clip from Jordi Visser here in his recent interview with Raoul Paul. He's going to break down this broadening out theme, the business cycle expansion, what it all means. It should help you put it into context. Have a listen.
Wait till we get back into it. And I see it broadening out next year. So I do believe the 4-year cycle myth, which does match up with the S&P and NASDAQ going down, I think that is ridiculous with rates being cut, earnings accelerating, and the build out of CapEx, which is going to be $5 trillion to get to 100 gigawatts by 2030. Unless you're going to bet against that, which a lot of people seem to be hoping is not going to happen, it's going to happen, and that's going to keep the earnings growing.
Now, a couple things to unpack there. He mentioned the invalidation of the 4-year cycle, and he mentioned CapEx earnings. So let's go over this one by one. Now, if you haven't noticed, we are at the end of the post-halving year with no alt season in sight. Ethereum has not set a new all-time high. Many people think that the cycle is about to end with no alt season, that this time really is different. I actually did a pretty long video about why I think the 4-year cycle has been invalidated this time around. Check it out if you have about 15-20 minutes. There's some good insights there. But back to the business cycle. Really what Jordi is saying is that because the ISM has not gone back up to around 60, 65, because we haven't seen the broadening out yet, that the 4-year cycle is really just a myth. That this time is different because we haven't seen the things that we typically see. By this time in the cycle, we have usually seen the ISM go higher. We've seen some sort of an alt season. We've seen Ethereum make a new all-time high. Now, why haven't we seen that yet? I believe the answer is very simple. Central banks, particularly the Federal Reserve here in the States, have kept rates higher for longer. You can see the connection between the ISM and the percentage of central banks cutting rates. As more central banks cut rates, the ISM goes higher because financial conditions get easier. This allows the economy to expand. This allows businesses to perform better. This allows people to have more jobs and more work. as the economy heats up, as interest rates go lower, as the cost of new capital becomes cheaper, as financial conditions ease, the economy does better. Kind of makes sense. So I've got this nice little cheat sheet here that I put together. How can we think of financial conditions? There's 5 big parts of it. There's interest rates. We talked about that, central bank short-term rates. There's equity markets. So as equity markets go higher, financial conditions ease. So as the NASDAQ, the S&P go higher in value, financial conditions ease. The US dollar, as the DXY falls. We know that in the last year or so, we've seen the DXY fall significantly. This eases financial conditions and allows risk assets to perform better. Maybe we'll do a video on exclusively the DXY, how this functions and why it's important to look at. Leave a comment below if you think that's something we should do a video on. But getting back to financial conditions, you've also got oil prices. So as oil prices fall, eases financial conditions. And then money market and liquidity metrics. And we did a video kind of on the liquidity plumbing of the US financial system. As there's more liquidity in the system, as it becomes easier to borrow money, financial conditions ease. And so what we're seeing right now, the backdrop is most of these things, I think all of them actually, are becoming easier. And so we're seeing countries around the world cutting rates. This chart right here, we've got 80% of countries cutting rates. And then we've got 76% of economies in recovery and expansion stage. They're coming into the business cycle, but they're waiting for the US. The US is the largest and most consequential market in the world. They lead the charge. They play the tune, and the rest of the world dances to it. And so we do have the Federal Reserve likely to cut rates. Even though Powell came out, he wanted to be hawkish, well, we might not cut in December, 66% chance that they're going to cut rates. It's uncommon for Powell not to cut rates when this chance is above 50%. So we're looking good there. And this is essentially how we forecast the ISM, is by using financial conditions. Another chart from Real Vision, you can see that we are projected to go higher. Financial conditions are projected to ease. Interest rates are coming down. Equity markets are going higher. The US dollar, the DXY, is falling. Oil is getting cheaper, and money market funds and liquidity is becoming more abundant. What has the Fed been doing recently? They've been injecting money into the financial system to ease funding stress, to add liquidity. We're ending QT. And so the availability of short-term cash is growing, financial conditions are easing. And so we can say with some certainty, even if we don't even look at this, this is a good way for you to look at this at home. If you don't have this chart in front of you, if you don't have a indicator in front of you, you can say, what are central banks doing? Well, how is oil looking? Is the DXY going up or down? How are equities performing? How are they adding liquidity or taking liquidity out? It will tell you how financial conditions are likely to behave. But luckily for us, we have this indicator right here. So we are projected to go by mid-20, this kind of shows us around mid-2026 here, 56.3. That's pretty good, considering the highest point we've really ever gotten to is around 60, maybe 61. We got up to 63 last year, 64. In terms of where we are right now, around 50, that's halfway to the maximum point where we can be in the business cycle. So that's bullish. Financial conditions is how we forecast. The ISM is how we forecast the business cycle. And if you ask me, that's how we forecast alt season. Now, the other thing Jordy mentioned was CapEx. What is CapEx? CapEx stands for capital expenditure, and it represents investments into manufacturing. This has been happening in great abundance because of the AI build-out that's coming. You could almost make the crazy argument that alt season is a matter of national security because the United States and China are in a kind of an AI Cold War. The US has to build out this AI. CapEx has to flow. The economy has to expand because of all the economic activity that happens as a result of the AI build out. Therefore, the ISM goes higher. Therefore, alt season comes. That's kind of a crazy take, but you can see my logic. And so let's get back to CapEx here. You've got S&P 500 AI and non-AI CapEx. You could say AI CapEx rising over the quarters. And you can see that the total amount invested in CapEx is rising. I think last I heard about 50% of companies' cash flow going to CapEx. 50% of that is going to AI. So we're seeing record CapEx inflows, and that's exactly what Jordy was talking about. And so I want to show you the connection between CapEx and GDP, and this will be important here in a second. So as you can see, that as CapEx, represented here in blue, goes higher or lower, GDP, represented here in black, also follows it around. There are examples. You see GDP crank up here, CapEx is no, but it catches up to it down the road. And so it's pretty fair to say that as more CapEx comes into the system, as more investment into manufacturing comes, GDP goes higher. As GDP goes higher, the ISM also goes higher. You can see that this is GDP lagged by 6 months. We have this here in the dotted line. The ISM manufacturing PMI, ISM PMI, it's the same thing, also goes higher. It's basically a one-to-one. I actually ran a regression analysis on this, and I think 50% of ISM's movement is explained by GDP. And so if we say to ourselves, there's a lot of investment coming to AI, there's a lot of CapEx coming, that's going to boost the economy, that's going to boost GDP. GDP is going to boost the ISM. The ISM is going to see Bitcoin dominance fall. It stands to reason that we should be excited about CapEx. We should be excited about rising GDP. We should be excited about a rising ISM, because that means that alt season is likely not far away. The broadening out from high value, high cap equities and cryptos into lower caps, maybe not as premier equities or cryptos, but that's where the gains are made. That's what we're all looking forward to. That's what we're excited about. We're looking for alt season. I believe the reason that we haven't had an alt season yet is because we haven't had a business cycle yet. And so I've got Tom Lee here. He's basically the Michael Saylor of Ethereum. He's going to explain what he's seeing and why he thinks the ISM is so important. Have a look.
That's right. And as you know, CEOs have not been that confident for the last 2.5 years because the Fed's been running tight monetary policy. The ISM's been below 50 for 31 months now. That's the longest stretch in history.
And so what Tom is alluding to here is that he's saying that the business cycle hasn't taken off yet. We've seen the ISM flat for the longest period in history because the Fed has been running high interest rates. I believe that because of all the COVID inflation that we saw, so they needed to overcorrect. This, I believe, is the key essence of why we have not had an alt season yet and why retail hasn't come back. You know, Ben Cohen actually just did a video that I watched. He's a great source to watch as well if you're looking for some technical analysis to go along with your macro analysis. Ben Cohen's a great site. But he was talking about how, you know, one of the big reasons that alt season hasn't come around is because we haven't seen retail come back. Well, why haven't we seen retail come back? In my mind, what I was thinking is because they're broke. They don't have any money. The business cycle hasn't come yet. People aren't feeling good about their finances. We're still down here. We haven't expanded yet. We haven't peaked in the business cycle. The economy hasn't grown. People don't feel good about their assets. People are struggling. We've been in kind of a silent recession here in the States. We don't have a very good labor market. People are kind of hurting. Why would they go out on the risk curve? Well, they're clearly not. That's why retail is not here. That's why alt season hasn't showed up yet. And that's why I think it's so important to pay attention to the ISM now more than ever. As we approach the post-halving year, we're starting to kind of break the cycle. Normally, it would be over here in a couple months or so, but it hasn't gotten started. Something you hear a lot in a typical bull market is this time's different, this time's different. They're telling you that that time is different because it can't end. I'm arguing that this time's different because it has yet to begin. A little bit of a difference there. And the data supports my argument. There are more qualified people than myself talking about this, talking about the ISM, talking about CapEx, talking about the broadening out of the economy. Leads me to suspect that I might be onto something. And these are exactly the kind of insights that keep me focused and grounded during a very volatile time in crypto. At a time when a lot of people are confused, they don't know which way to look, they don't know what's going on, they don't know who to trust. I'm not asking you to trust me, I'm asking you to trust the data that I present to you. And so I hope this makes sense to you. I hope you understand why the business cycle is so important to look at, why the ISM is so key to understand, and why forecasting it can be such a valuable tool in a time of uncertainty. These are exactly the kind of tools that can help you become a better investor, not only now, but for the rest of your investing journey. And if you want to continue to learn these tools and learn how to understand markets, you got to like and subscribe down below. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you've learned anything. Let me know if this has been helpful for you. Do you think the 4-year cycle is over? Or based on this new information, do you think we go longer? Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.